October 5th, 2021. A Chinese man grips a plastic tiller in the middle of the Atlantic, 85 miles from Florida. His inflatable boat cost $3,000. No life raft, emergency beacon, or sailing experience. Gasoline sloshes across the rubber floor. One spark and the boat becomes a fireball. Inside his backpack are 2 SD cards containing footage of China's concentration camps, filmed from the ground by a civilian. 6 months ago, this man ran a fast food stall. No intelligence training, no press badge, no passport. He walked into the most surveilled region on Earth, 268 detention compounds, millions of cameras, thousands of police outposts, AI flagging people for interrogation, and filmed site after site, while every checkpoint scanner failed to stop him. Before pushing off from the Bahamas, he scheduled the footage to upload automatically. If the ocean kills him, the video still goes live. China spent billions building an unbeatable surveillance machine. He beat it with a rented camera and 2 SD cards. How did an ordinary man crack the world's most advanced surveillance state? And what did China do when they found out? By the late 2000s, a flood of testimony, leaked documents, and investigative reporting points to mass detention targeting Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims across Xinjiang. The UN's Human Rights Office later concludes that serious human rights violations have occurred, counter-terrorism measures and extremism policies cast as a net wide enough to catch whole communities. In that same assessment, the UN notes a dramatic rise in enforced disappearance cases tied directly to the emergence of so-called re-education camps. Families report relatives vanishing without charges, without trials, without explanations. The disappeared are not criminals. They are educators, shopkeepers, students, people whose only crime is existing inside a demographic the state has decided to fear. But in the public mind, a gap persists between credible and confirmed. That gap is where cover-ups breathe. From orbit, the landscape transforms fast. Huge compounds rise in remote deserts. Roads materialize. Walls stretch toward the horizon. In 2020, a major BuzzFeed News investigation identifies 268 newly built compounds by cross-referencing blanked-out zones on Baidu Maps with external satellite imagery. A separate open-source project catalogs more than 380 suspected detention facilities constructed or expanded since 2017. The infrastructure is so large, you can photograph it from space and still be told it is a vocational school. Construction timelines reveal urgent facilities that would normally take years to build appear operational within months. The scale suggests not reformation but containment, industrial containment. China's position never wavers vocational education and training centers. Counter-extremism. People graduate. Nothing is forced. State media coverage of official tours features invited diplomats praising what they are shown as real Xinjiang. The messaging is polished, consistent, and relentless. Every leaked document gets a rebuttal. Every survivor testimony meets a counter-narrative. Every satellite image gets reclassified as misidentification. The state does not deny the facilities exist, it denies what happens inside them. And denial, when packaged professionally, can outlast evidence for years. And if all you hold is a satellite image, the argument slides. Walls and watchtowers do not arrive with labels. There is no, "Hello, I am a prison," sign bolted to the perimeter. A satellite image is a screenshot of a crime scene, and you can stare at a screenshot until your eyes blur and still argue about what it really shows. Is that a school? A factory? A prison? Your brain craves certainty, and a cover-up survives in the space between likely and proven. That is why ground-level footage carries a different weight. Not for drama, for geometry. It connects coordinates to concrete. It turns a shape on a map into a structure you can point at and say, this is real, functioning, operational. What the world needs is video of the hands. So the world tries to look closer. Foreign diplomats receive choreographed tours of pre-selected facilities. Foreign reporters are escorted to staged sites China calls training centers, while rights organizations call the tours designed misdirection. Correspondents who attempt unapproved reporting describe immediate surveillance, obstruction, pressure. Press organizations document intimidation and expulsion. The pattern is clear. The access is granted only when the outcome is controlled. Independent verification is blocked at every turn. The machine allows witnesses, but only the witnesses it has already rehearsed. Inside Xinjiang, the control is not subtle. It is industrial. Human Rights Watch details a surveillance platform called IJOP, a bureaucratic acronym for a digital dragnet where police fuse data from phones, movement patterns, and suspicious behaviors into a system that flags individuals for interrogation and detention. The definition of suspicion expands to absurdity, such as praying too often, not drinking alcohol, growing a beard, traveling abroad, owning certain books, contacting relatives outside China. Everyday behaviors become evidence. Normal life becomes a criminal suspicion. Reuters reports officers pulling travelers aside at checkpoints, plugging phones into data extraction devices, scanning for anything classified as illegal information. Associated Press maps the broader architecture to millions of cameras, over 7,000 police outposts, and a database ecosystem with the authority to trigger arrests. Academic analysis of government spending shows security-related construction in Xinjiang tripled in 2017, with domestic security budgets surging into tens of billions of yuan. A machine this enormous should not have a crack, and yet it does, because the entire apparatus is tuned to detect outsiders, foreign journalists, human rights investigators, diplomats asking uncomfortable questions. The system scans for threats from outside. It is less prepared for threats that look like traffic. So what happens when the person walking toward the camps is not an outsider at all? And what does a system built to detect threats do when the threat looks exactly like everyone else it is designed to protect? Guan Heng was born on November 1987 at Nanyang, in the Henan province. No intelligence training, foreign passport, press badge, or famous name. He grows up ordinary enough to be invisible, and that invisibility becomes his only weapon. In a surveillance state, being unremarkable is a form of camouflage more effective than any forged credential. The system is built to detect outliers. He becomes the opposite of a man so average that algorithms skip over him like background noise. He scrambles through jobs the way millions of young Chinese men do: fast food stall, oil field labor, freelance work. He once drove long distances across China for fun, mapping the country through windshield glass, accumulating the kind of geographic fluency that would later save his life. He learns to read highways like sentences, to navigate without relying on apps that report location data to servers he cannot see. The resume of a person no system is calibrated to flag, not because he is trained to evade detection, because he has never done anything worth detecting. Then he learns to climb the Great Firewall, bypassing censorship tools to read the parts of history the state prefers unlit. Tiananmen, Tibet, the Cultural Revolution's body count. He reads survivor testimony from camps. He reads leaked government directives. He reads the gap between what the state says and what the evidence shows. It changes him the way hairline fractures change concrete slowly, then all at once. You cannot unlearn what you have seen. And once you know the system lies, you start noticing where else it lies. In 2019, he rides west into Xinjiang as a tourist and feels the control first-hand checkpoints that function like border crossings inside his own country. Cameras dense enough to map a sneeze. Police stations every few blocks. Facial recognition gates at gas stations. ID scans to buy a knife, to check into a hotel, to enter a shopping mall. The density of surveillance is not subtle. It is designed to be felt, to remind every person passing through that they are being watched, cataloged, assessed. Then 2020 arrives. Lockdowns, time, restlessness. He reads the BuzzFeed News investigation that charts 268 detention compounds from satellite imagery and blanked out maps the project that later wins a Pulitzer Prize. And he sees something everyone else misses. Not a new fact, a new angle. Foreign journalists cannot drive around Xinjiang filming prisons. They get followed, blocked, escorted, expelled, funneled into staged access. That pattern is documented over and over. Western reporters describe being tailed by plainclothes security within minutes of arriving. Equipment confiscated, footage deleted, interviews interrupted. The control is so tight it becomes the story itself. But a Chinese man with a standard national ID can still move. Not freely, not comfortably, but move. which is all he needs. It is a design flaw. The surveillance machine must pick targets. It cannot arrest an entire population for standing near a wall. It has to notice you first. And noticing requires a trigger, unusual behavior, suspicious associations, patterns that deviate from the norm. The system is optimized for scale, which means it must filter. And filters have blind spots. So Guan decides to stay small, not hidden, just unremarkable. He rents a consumer-grade DV camera instead of professional gear. Professional equipment signals intent. Consumer gear signals a hobby. He plans the way a lone burglar plans a job where the alarm system is the entire neighborhood, every movement calculated, every decision weighed against the risk of triggering suspicion. He packs 2 SD cards, one for the official version of his trip tourist snapshots, harmless scenery, one for the truth, 2 realities in one device, separated by a few grams of plastic. If police search his camera, they find vacation footage. The real evidence stays hidden. Human Rights in China later quotes him, explaining the logic filming is one thing, posting is another. The second he publishes, police will definitely find him. So he does not plan to report from Xinjiang. He plans to escape from it. And in October 2020, he starts driving west. But the machine he is about to enter does not need to be smarter than him. It only needs to get curious. How long can he stay uninteresting before the system decides he is not? And what happens to a man who spends so long pretending to be unremarkable that he forgets what it felt like to stand out? The first checkpoint feels like crossing into a foreign country without leaving your own. Barriers, cameras, armed with police. He hands over his ID card, a face scan, a pause long enough to picture the screen flashing red. Then the gate lifts. He drives into a region where the state collects data the way lungs collect air. The IJOP platform can generate detention lists, not because people committed crimes, but because an algorithm decides they might. Reuters describes police plugging travelers' phones into extraction devices at routine stops. In Xinjiang, that kind of intrusion has the casualness of a speed trap, so Guan controls what he can. He does not argue, he does not record confrontations, he acts like traffic. He drives with satellite coordinates from the BuzzFeed investigation loaded into Mapbox maps, each marker a question pinned to the landscape school or cage. Day 1. Hammy. A gray marker turns out wrong, a quiet pink house, nothing operational. Then a yellow marker leads him to a detention center. High walls, barbed wire coiled along the top. He films from a distance, then does something that reveals his entire operational mind. He buys snacks at a shop near the entrance and pays digitally on purpose, so if anyone asks why his phone pinged this location, a boring transaction sits waiting in the log. That is his tradecraft, not gadgets, boredom. After each filming session, he swaps the SD cards. The valuable card vanishes into a hidden compartment. The empty card stays in the camcorder the one police would find and dismiss. The surveillance system does not fail to watch him. It watches everyone. What it fails to do at first is assign meaning. And meaning is the real tripwire. Once the system decides you are meaningful, everything becomes evidence of your route. Your hotel check-ins, your payment history. Databases do not forget. The clock is ticking on a fuse he cannot see. Day 2. His route threads through Hami, Muli, Jimsar, Fukang, Urumqi, toward Korla. Markers point to detention centers and prisons. Some vocational buildings appear half-abandoned, but barbed wire still crowns the walls. He realizes the operation is not a single new system, new facilities grafted onto modified existing ones, detention folding into detention. Every angle matters. Every detail that reads, operational matters. A delivery truck unloading vegetables means people are inside. Day 3. Near Urumqi, coordinates lead him toward a compound officially labeled a drug rehabilitation center. He parks, pretends he is on a morning walk, films with a GoPro. 3 more heavily guarded compounds cluster around it. Then, on a road named Gaoki, he sees a sprawling complex with high walls and watchtowers. He zooms in until red characters on a rooftop snap into focus reform through labor. Nobody brands a daycare with those words. Instead, he goes deeper. One red marker remains Dabancheng, remote, surrounded by wilderness. He parks by a pond, climbs a steep hillside alone, lies prone in the dirt to film a massive complex spread across the valley below. Guard towers punctuate the perimeter. The scale dwarfs the facilities he has already filmed. In Xinjiang, visibility is dangerous, and he is now the most visible thing on this hillside. When he finishes filming and hurries downhill, he freezes. A man fishes beside the pond where Guan parked. One phone call, and the mission ends. Guan does the only move left in the social theater. He walks up smiling. "Sir, what are you fishing for?" "Just a tourist. Just curiosity." The fisherman does not call anyone. Guan drives away on trembling legs. The machine does not need to catch him on that hill. It only needs to notice a pattern. Why is this man always near walls? One final stop, Korla. Behind a military camp sits another heavily guarded facility. He edges closer, and a shop owner locks eyes on him. In the quiet standoff, Guan does something absurd. He floors his SUV and drifts donuts across the wasteland as though testing the vehicle. A grown man spinning tires beside a military base. The shop owner watches, decides this man is an idiot rather than a threat, and loses interest. The second those eyes turn away, Guan films. Insanity is sometimes just intelligence wearing a costume. If stories like this one are the reason you watch this channel, take 1 second to subscribe. That single click is the difference between these stories reaching 100 people or 100,000. By the time he crosses back out of Xinjiang, he has filmed multiple sites over 3 days, including the remote Dabancheng complex. But the footage is worthless if it never leaves China, and the second he tries to publish it inside the machine finally has a reason to notice him. So the question collapses to the only one that matters. Can he get the truth out before Xinjiang turns him into a missing person? And if the footage never leaves China, does the evidence even exist? Or does it just become another secret the desert buries? He returns to ordinary China carrying an extraordinary liability. Inside the country, the footage is radioactive. Uploading from home is self-destruction. Mailing the SD cards is begging for interception. Even carrying them through an airport is a coin flip where the losing side erases his entire future. He says that later finishing the film was not the hard part. Posting it was. The moment the video goes online, police will definitely find him. And definitely in this context does not mean a fine or a warning. It means disappearance, detention, a trial conducted in silence behind walls he has just spent days filming from the outside. He needs distance, not kilometers, jurisdiction. But the pandemic has turned borders to concrete. China's exit controls tighten. International flights dwindle to a handful. Months pass, then more months. He sits with a digital bomb he cannot detonate without blowing himself up. Every day he waits is another day the state could connect his route to the coordinates he followed. Another day his face could surface in the wrong database. Another day closer to the knock on the door that ends everything. And waiting does something specific to a man like this. It locks him inside a countdown without showing him the clock. The paranoia becomes physical. He checks news sites compulsively. He scans crowds for plainclothes police. He rehearses explanations he knows will never save him. Because relaxing is how you miss the knock on the door. Finally, summer 2021 opens a crack. On July 4th, he leaves China via Shekou, transits through Hong Kong, and flies to Ecuador visa-free for Chinese travelers at the time. He stays there for more than 2 months for a single practical reason to get vaccinated with Pfizer. Not just for health protection for mobility. Western vaccines open borders that domestic ones do not. He does not trust domestic vaccines, and he fears China's health code tracking system could snap shut and trap him again. The health code app is not just a pandemic tool, it is a control mechanism that can flag individuals, restrict movement, lock people inside cities with a single administrative keystroke. He knows that once he is outside, returning could mean never leaving again. Then he flies to the Bahamas. Now the problem shifts from politics to physics. From Freeport to the Florida coast is roughly 85 miles in a straight line. 85 miles of open Atlantic with no landmarks, no margin for error, and weather that does not negotiate. He tries to ship an inflatable boat from China to save money. His Bahamian visa gives him only 14 days. The shipment delays. By October 2021, waiting is no longer an option. So he walks into a marine store in Freeport and spends nearly $3,000, almost everything he has, on an inflatable boat and an outboard motor. No wetsuit, no emergency beacon, no flares. He cannot afford a sealed fuel system. He cannot afford redundant safety equipment. He cannot afford a life raft. What he buys is barely sufficient for a coastal day trip. He is about to take it across an ocean. So he builds a different kind of redundancy. He does not duplicate the vessel. He duplicates the outcome. He schedules the upload. He has zero sailing experience, no real navigation equipment, just a mechanical compass and a phone with a GPS map. No backup battery, no waterproof case, no redundancy if the phone dies. The odds are not in his favor. They are openly hostile. But before he pushes off, he executes the sharpest move of the entire operation. He does not plan to press publish later. He plans to be unable to stop it, because the only way to beat a system that erases evidence is to remove yourself as the evidence's gatekeeper. At that moment, the equation flips. The state can arrest him, but it cannot unpublish the future. He pushes off. The Bahamian coastline dissolves behind him. The only thing ahead is the open Atlantic and a motor that was never engineered to carry a human rights scandal across an ocean. And now we are back at 3:12 a.m. The boat rocking, gasoline sloshing, the compass needle trembling. The timer is ticking. Will he reach Florida before the sea swallows him, or before his luck finally burns through? And what does a man become when the only thing separating him from death is a scheduled upload he can no longer cancel? He drifts at sea for nearly 23 hours. That is his word, drifted, not sailed, not navigated. Drifted because out there, control is a luxury he cannot purchase. He barely eats or drinks. He later says he manages a single can of soda the entire crossing. His lips crack, salt crusts on his skin. The horizon offers nothing. No landmarks, no ships, no confirmation he is heading the right direction, except a compass needle and a phone, GPS draining battery by the hour. The waves are punishing. The engine is worse. He pours gasoline from an open can into the motor while the boat pitches and rolls. Fuel spills across the rubber floor. The smell saturates everything. For hours, he sits inside a fire hazard that cannot pull over, cannot dock, cannot do anything except keep moving or sink. He wants to land at night to avoid detection. The ocean does not care. Early the next morning, he spots the Florida coastline. Around 9 a.m., the inflatable scrapes sand. The first people he sees are not border agents, an elderly couple on a morning walk. He grabs his backpack and sprints into the bushes. He hides. He watches a Coast Guard patrol boat cruise past offshore. Then the most important thing happens. Nothing. No sirens, no hands on his collar, no algorithm deciding his future. The machine he beat in Xinjiang cannot reach across oceans. For the first time in over a year, no system is watching him. Now the only machine left is the internet. And the internet has its own rule that once something goes online, it multiplies. On October 5th, 2021, his video goes public. A rare on-the-ground record from a Chinese citizen who used satellite coordinates to locate and film detention-related facilities across Xinjiang, including a remote complex at Dabancheng that contradicted official claims that re-education had ended. The footage does not show the inside of cells. It does not capture prisoners. What it captures is something the cover-up cannot absorb: geometry. Coordinates matched to concrete. Angles matched to satellite imagery. Operational activity at sites that officially do not exist. For the researchers who had spent years proving the system from orbit, something finally clicks into place. Geospatial analysts who helped build the satellite maps say out loud, what everyone in open source intelligence knows but rarely gets ground-level footage is the missing puzzle piece. It lets you corroborate what you see from space and confirm that the shapes are not just shapes, but functioning detention sites. Ground truth. Angles that match coordinates. Walls that match what satellites suggested. The Pulitzer-winning BuzzFeed team write in support of him, stating that his footage provides crucial corroboration for their satellite analysis. The cover-up loses friction. It gets harder to slide. Then the price arrives. Online attacks. Doxing. His family in China was questioned by authorities after the video goes public, according to multiple reports. Years later, the story twists again, and he is detained in the United States during an immigration enforcement operation, then granted asylum by an immigration judge on January 28, 2026, based on a well-founded fear of persecution if returned to China. But do not let the aftermath steal the ending, because the ending part the machine cannot erase is already permanent. China builds a system designed to make reality deniable. Satellites overhead, algorithms on the ground, escorts for visitors, prisons relabeled as schools, and a bureaucracy so vast it can absorb accusations the way a desert absorbs rain without changing shape. And one man with a rented camera and 2 SD cards walks straight into it. Not because he is the strongest, not because he is protected, not because he has a death wish or a hero complex, because he is ordinary enough to slip through the seams. The machine is calibrated to detect threats. He looks like traffic. That is the flaw. That is the blind spot. That is how a billion-yuan surveillance state meets one unbudgeted human being and loses. If you want to see what happens when the same system gets penetrated from the outside, watch the video on screen now. A US citizen becomes the CIA's best way into North Korea. Micro cameras, dead drops, a bribery-powered spy network until a USB handoff in broad daylight ends it all. Forced confession, labor sentence, executed contacts. Click here.